You won't believe what happened. Ferrari brought its most ambitious package to Miami, 11 upgrades designed to change the season, and yet, when push came to shove, everything fell apart. Hamilton got out of the car without answers. Vasseur spoke of a structural problem, and Leclerc confirmed what no one wanted to hear: the SF26 cannot compete on equal terms in classification. Subscribe to continue uploading more of this type of content now, if we continue. The big question is no longer whether Ferrari can improve, but something much more uncomfortable. Is the team fighting against Mercedes or against its own technical limitations since the beginning of the year? The blow came at the key moment. The 2026 Miami Sprint classification not only organized the grid, it exposed the complete reality of Ferrari. With all the improvements on the track, with weeks of accumulated work, the result was cold. Hamilton 7th, without rhythm, without immediate answers. It was not a specific error. It was a symptom. Because while the Briton was waiting for a clear jump, what he found was a car incapable of sustaining performance when the track demanded perfection. His reaction said it all. Real disappointment, without excuses, recognizing that SF26 was not good at the most important moment of the weekend. And in parallel, Charles Leclerc managed to partially save the situation with a third place. But even that result has a catch. Because it does not reflect equality, it reflects resistance. The Monegasque made the most of a car that responds in curves, but systematically loses ground on the straight. Here the real conflict arises. Two different results, the same underlying problem. Ferrari does not fail by execution. Ferrari fails because its performance is not constant when the classification enters its decisive phase. And the most worrying thing is that this incident is not new, is the repetition of a pattern that is beginning to mark the entire season. This is where everything gets complicated. Because Ferrari's problem does not stop at a bad result, it becomes a technical dilemma that conditions every decision of the team. The SF26 is fast, yes, but only on part of the circuit. In curves, the car responds, generates load, allowing Leclerc to make real differences. But as soon as the straight hits, all that performance disappears. Fred Vasseur explained it bluntly: the Scuderia loses at least 0.2 per lap on the straights. And in modern Formula One, that difference is insurmountable in qualifying. It is not a minor detail. It is the reason why Ferrari competes, but does not fight for pole. The origin is in the energy system. While Mercedes activates an extra mode in Q3, Ferrari cannot sustain that level of power. The so-called super clipping appears earlier, limits electrical deployment, and leaves the car without power at the critical moment. Leclerc summed it up directly: when others raise the level, Ferrari cannot follow them. And this generates an even more delicate consequence: impossible decisions within the team. Because every adjustment means sacrificing something. If they optimize for qualifying, they compromise the race. If they think about long pace, they give up Saturday. There is no real balance. Hamilton, accustomed for years to always having the best engine at that decisive moment, now faces a completely different reality. And that transition is not just technical, it is mental. Ferrari is not choosing between winning or losing. You're choosing how to waste less time. And that is a scenario that no title candidate team can afford to sustain for an entire season. This is where Ferrari hits rock bottom. Because the breaking point in Miami is not the grid position, it is the confirmation that the problem has no immediate solution. It's no longer about adjusting the car overnight. It is about accepting that the limit is at the base of the project. The data makes it evident. On a straight line, the difference reaches up to 8 kilometers per hour compared to its direct rivals. That is not an isolated tenth. It is a structural disadvantage that is repeated lap after lap, circuit after circuit. And the hardest thing is that the pilots know it. Leclerc can squeeze the car into curves. He can approach perfection, but he reaches a straight and loses everything he has gained. Hamilton, for the first time in his recent career, finds himself with a car that cannot respond when he needs it most. This is the team's critical moment. Because while Mercedes has already won the first races and is building a solid lead, Ferrari is still trying to understand its own car. He is not closing the distance. You are reacting late. And here appears the greatest risk of all, the psychological one. When a pilot enters Q3 knowing that he has no tools to fight, performance drops even before setting the time. Doubt sets in. Trust disappears. Miami not only leaves a disappointing result, it leaves a dangerous feeling within the team, that of competing with a limit that they cannot break, at least not yet. And here comes the final truth. Ferrari is not out of the fight, but is not where it needs to be either. Miami leaves a clear conclusion. The team has direction, it has structure, it has the capacity for development, but is trapped by a factor that defines this new era of Formula One, the power unit. Because while the chassis demonstrates real potential, even superior in certain phases, everything is conditioned by that energy deficit that remains unresolved. And without power in qualifying, there is no position on the grid. And without position, there is no race control. However, within this scenario, a possible way out appears. The regulations open a door with additional engine improvements, the so-called development opportunities that Ferrari could activate in the next races if the deficit is confirmed. And along with that, the arrival of the new engine scheduled for mid-season could completely change the balance. Here's the real climax. Ferrari doesn't need to reinvent itself. It needs time. But the championship does not wait. Mercedes is already building an advantage. And with each weekend that passes without a solution, that distance becomes more difficult to close. The team's transformation is already underway. The organization works better than ever. Improvements come. The car evolves. But the question that defines the entire season remains unanswered. Will that engine upgrade come before the championship is completely out of reach? Or was Miami the point where Ferrari lost more than just a classification? The closure leaves an uncomfortable feeling. Ferrari leaves Miami with more answers than before, but also with much greater pressure. Because now there are no longer any doubts about the problem. It is identified, measured, and publicly recognized by the entire team. And that completely changes the scenario. From this moment on, each ranking that does not improve will be a confirmation that the limit is still there. Every Saturday will be a direct test of the project. But there is also a nuance that cannot be ignored. When a team understands exactly where its weakness is, the next step is no longer searching, it's attacking. Ferrari knows that the deficit is around 4% in power. It knows that there are regulatory options to compensate for it. And it knows that the development of the new engine could be the turning point. This is where everything is defined. Not in Miami, but in what comes next. In how they react in Monaco, in how they evolve in the following races, in whether they can really transform this problem into an opportunity. Because the season still has a long way to go. But the window to react is getting smaller and smaller. This is where the immediate future is defined. Ferrari enters a phase where explanations are no longer enough. Visible results on the track are needed. Because after Miami, every improvement, every adjustment, every technical decision will be evaluated under a single question. Does it really reduce the difference in classification? The calendar gives no respite. Monaco appears as the first major exam, a circuit where power matters less, and the chassis can make the difference. And there, the SF26 has a real opportunity to demonstrate that its cornering performance is not an illusion, but a solid foundation on which to build the comeback. But the margin is minimal. Because while Ferrari hopes to activate new engine development options and prepares the key mid-season evolution, Mercedes continues to add victories and widen the gap in the championship. There is no pause. There is no room for error. This act is not about what Ferrari is today. It's about what he is bound to be in the next races. A team capable of transforming a critical weakness into an immediate reaction. Because if that reaction doesn't come now, it won't come in time. Miami leaves a lesson that is impossible to ignore. Ferrari did not fail for lack of work, nor for lack of talent. It failed because at the most critical moment in modern qualifying, it does not have the tool that defines the difference, the power available when everything is at stake. Hamilton put honestly. Vasseur confirmed it crudely. Leclerc suffers it lap after lap. 3 different voices pointing out the same problem. And that in Formula One is not a coincidence, it is a diagnosis. But the story is not closed. Ferrari remains third in the championship with 183 points, in a season where room for development still exists and where the rules can offer a unique opportunity to make up ground. The difference now is not in the potential. It is in time. Because if improvements come, Ferrari can change the course of the championship. But if they delay, Miami will be remembered as the end of an illusion that came too soon. And that is the final reflection that remains on the table. In a season where every detail defines the result, Ferrari already knows exactly what it is missing. Subscribe to continue uploading more of that content. Now you really think about all this.